Hey everybody, Dustin DePierre here, columnist Jeremy Price. Back here at Assembly Hall. Probably after tonight, we'll probably be here once more.
I would think so.
I think there's a good possibility because tonight, that's pretty much the end of that whole bubble thing. That went pretty fast. After those two upsets over Ohio State, Iowa, people were thinking maybe if enough breaks. But yeah, that's the end of that. No, that's done. Indiana's now 17-13 overall, 7-10 in the Big Ten. Like I said, I think they had to win 4. With the loss to Nebraska, I think even if you get to the finals, the Big Ten tournament, I think you're out. I think they actually have to win the whole thing. There's too many problematic losses on here. Not that Nebraska is a really bad loss. It's a top 50 team and it's a bubble team. And they I think really helped themselves in a lot of ways tonight. But Indiana hurts itself big time. They go down 70-60, and a lot of problems here. First to start, obviously Noah Vonleh. They found out right before the game he wasn't going to be able to go. Tom Crean told reporters yesterday that he thought he would be available, that things were looking pretty good. But apparently they had a walkthrough today, and he wasn't feeling so hot. He was feeling uncomfortable. I don't know. I guess he was cleared to play, I think was what was said on the radio show, the pregame radio show, but found out later he was not. And it didn't seem like they obviously didn't do nearly as good a job. They weren't nearly as prepared for that possibility this time, number one. Number two, Ohio State played into Indiana's hands a little bit on Sunday. They went with shooters open, allowed Indiana to open the court up. Nebraska did not. Nebraska was going to pack the lane from the beginning. They packed the lane again, ran a good bit of zone, and Indiana in a lot of cases didn't do so hot against that.
No, they did not. And Nebraska is, it's a little different animal than Ohio State. I mean, we saw with Ohio State, their fatal flaw is sort of offensively. They're sort of limited in terms of what their options are. Nebraska has a little bit more options offensively.
Nebraska's a better shooting team.
Right.
I don't know if they've got all-around better options, but they're definitely a better shooting team. Petaway hit some big ones, even though he was 3 for 10. It seemed like all 3 of his shots were pretty big. Walter Pitchford they've got a stretch 5. Ohio State doesn't have anything close to a stretch 5, and Mary Williams, I don't think, ever scores outside of 5 feet. Pitchford, I don't know if he scores inside of 20. But he was really good tonight. 3 3-pointers was really critical. And
Nebraska basically picked up where they left off, I thought, the second half of the game in Lincoln, in terms of their defensive mantra was essentially "Don't let Yogi Ferrell beat you." Was pretty much what it was. If somebody else wanted to step up, and tonight I guess Troy Williams gave it a ride at least.
Yeah, it's the best we've seen Troy Williams play since November, I think. Most he scored 18 points.
Yeah.
Most he scored since the Washington game. He had 22 in that one.
Yeah, definitely. And 2 of 2 from 3. Those were the first 2 3-pointers Indiana made in this game, which I wouldn't have given you a nickel that would happen.
Yeah.
But
thanks.
Basically, if Yogi wasn't going to get going tonight, then Nebraska was fine with that. Whatever happened from there happened. And
Yogi did not get going tonight.
The other thing was the rebounding. I mean,
sure.
Indiana winds up winning the rebounding 37-36.
Didn't feel like it. Yeah. No, not at all.
That was mostly there.
They came back. There was. You do forget that. They did have a 10-point comeback there, and they were looking really good for a while. And it just seemed like they were that close to taking it over, and they just didn't. Basically, and a big part of that was, they just missed shots, had opportunities. Yogi Ferrell, I thought, this was, with the possible exception of the Syracuse game last year, with the obvious meltdown he had in the tournament, this might have been one of the worst games I've seen him play.
It's up there.
It's up there. I don't know if it's the one. I might be able to think of 1 or 2 more, but this is up there for the worst game I've seen him play. He was really forcing it, taking shots he really didn't need to take. There was that one transition 3 that he airballed that was pretty much inexcusable. So there was even when he had looks, he wasn't making them. It just seemed like he was really forcing it tonight, and I thought it hurt his team.
It did. I really don't. It's hard to put a finger on it because you look at his numbers and they weren't that bad.
His floor game was actually good. 8
2
rebounds,
turnovers, 5 assists.
The shots were just quick. I guess this thing. He's done. He didn't have a horrible night in terms of handling the ball. Again, he had 5 assists, but it was just the shots just. There was at least a couple where you're like, what was that for?
It just didn't seem, these last couple of games, Indiana seemed like a team that had kind of turned the corner. Guys were on the same page. Everybody was kind of pulling in the same direction. Tonight was not the case at all with that. It just didn't feel like guys quite were in sync, and that started with Yogi. He just didn't seem to have a rhythm to him this game.
No, not at all. And I think even Syracuse's 2-3 zone obviously was better. Syracuse's zone is the gold standard. This one, like, Indiana looked more clueless to me against it today than I think I've ever seen them look, especially in the last 2 minutes. Like, I don't even know that they didn't even seem to have a plan half the time, and they seemed to not know what the plan was. I didn't even think they looked that bad against it in terms of the strategic end of it from Syracuse. It seemed like they had a just hard time figuring out what they wanted to, or getting accomplished what they wanted to do because Syracuse was so good. In this case, it just seemed like they looked at it and were like, okay, what do we do now? Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean, did you look at it the same way?
I thought so, and maybe some of the credit to Nebraska. They didn't really pull all the stops out as far as the zone goes until the home stretch of the game, the last 5 minutes or so.
No, they're right. They were strict 3-2 down the stretch. They were kind of back and forth with the end, but down the stretch they went straight 2-3, and they seemed to just really hone in on whoever had the ball. Well, they seemed to have to initiate offense like 35 feet away from the bucket.
The other thing I thought they did, obviously being cognizant of where Yogi was and what he was doing, was they were very aware of what Will Sheehy was doing in terms of the zone. Will's been great as a zone buster because he's able to flash the middle, get those elbow jumpers, what have you. They were taking that away from him. Sometimes they would let the ball get in the middle of the zone. I remember one time Yogi got it. I think another time Robinson got it.
Yeah, and then
those were the guys they were content to let those guys get it in the middle of the zone because they had the length and the size to do something about those guys getting it in the middle of the zone. That really wasn't going to hurt them as long as Sheehy wasn't getting the ball in the middle of the zone.
Yeah. No, and they made that hard. There was a couple cases he got some looks. Some that somebody hit, some that he didn't. So that worked on in some regards and some not so much. And on the other side, on the defensive end, they lost shooters a couple times. Critically against Pitchford, apparently that was a switch that two guys just left him, and you don't want to do that. Crean said that baffles his mind how that happened. It doesn't really baffle ours at this point. It's a freshman team. We've seen enough mistakes at this point that those things happen with this group from time to time. Somebody's going to miss a guy or something like that. But that obviously happened, was a problem. Siobhan Seals was able to really drive on them too. They weren't great against the dribble, especially against a 6'7", really a power forward is what Siobhan Shields is, and he was able to break them down off the dribble, which is kind of a concern.
Yeah, and I mean he's like a 30% 3-point shooter for the season. Not exactly a guy you would think. I mean, yes, he can hit the three, but I think you would give it to him. I think you would live with giving him that shot a lot more than a Pitchford or Gallegos even got going there for a brief time early in the second half. Yeah,
Gallegos hit like 3 in a row. He ends up 3 for 10 with 9 points, but those were some big shots at the time that he got them, because it seemed like Indiana was like starting a run. I mean, they eventually made the run, but it was right where like Indiana would cut it back to 7 or 8, and then it would be at 10, and then it would be at 6, and then it would be at 9, because Gallegos just kept hitting shots to stem the tide, and Indiana was able to eventually make the run, but it started late. They ran out of a lot of gas trying it, because it's really their whole push was like a 10-minute push. Instead of just being able to take it over and then go, it was working to get all the way back and expending a lot of energy cutting that lead down, and from there it just didn't seem like they could get over the hump, and part of that was because Gallegos was hitting threes.
Yeah, I think, the way I put it was this game was sort of a case where Indiana managed to take the disappointment, the frustration, and all the issues that it's had during this season.
Osterman was Osterman. Anyway.
And pretty much crammed it into this last 40 minutes of basketball.
This is his sign, by the way, going on.
So, I guess maybe a fitting end to the home slate.
Pretty much. I'm sorry I killed your point right there, Jeremy. I apologize. That's what happens. Osterman is himself a distraction. I don't know that he can appear on camera with us anymore, but this is his way of saying hi. Anyway. Moving on from that. It was a fitting way to just cut this season off, in the sense of they're still going to play some games. I mean, heck, they might go up and beat Michigan. Who knows?
Maybe.
But even if they do at this point, it's really not. The at-large discussion isn't even there. But
I can't imagine. I don't know about you, but I really can't imagine Von Lay playing at Michigan at this point, because that game is kind of irrelevant in terms of making the NCAA tournament. It's not going to change anything as far as that goes. I mean, I would think, unless he feels really good and really wants to play, if there's any question whatsoever, I would think you'd sit him, because it pretty much is going to boil down to what happens next week at the Big Ten tournament. If you don't win 4 games next week at the Big Ten tournament.
Fair, but I think also the Michigan game, even if they win the Michigan game and they don't do anything else, the Michigan game, I think, though, is one of those games that has intrinsic value in and of itself. Whether or not it actually leads to something, I think that's still a game you want to win.
Yeah,
You know what I
I'm
mean?
not saying
Like,
you don't want to
I
win.
think-
I just don't know if you risk
Yeah, but
on
like,
life for that.
you know how. I think you do for this reason. Well, one, there's a fair to good chance that you're not going to have them anyway in a year. You know, like this, you're down to the end of it anyway. You're probably not going to the NCAA tournament. It's almost like beating Michigan on the road would almost be, you know, like that's a big feather in a cap that you could still get. You know, like, is it any bigger? Are you in any better shape if you save Vonleh to win the 8-9 game and then get beat by Michigan probably in the Big Ten, you know, in the second round of the Big Ten tournament, and then go play an NIT game? You know, like, if you go beat Michigan, you can save that one. That's one you can point to. So, you know, just in and of itself, that's a game that the rest of this team can carry with them into the offseason. You know, I don't know. I don't know that I save him. Maybe you do, but
Well, I guess maybe it's a moot point whether you would save him or not, because it sounds to me like he's kind of making his own decision with things and where he,
because apparently
how he feels about
so
things.
it's
I mean,
up to him.
If it's not a stress fracture situation, there's obviously no risk in terms of damage or whatever. It's just a comfort level issue.
Right. Yeah, and if you're Von Lamb, you're going to be on national TV. What channel is that game on? Is that ESPN or is that?
I don't even know.
I don't know. I mean, you know, I think it helps your draft stock if you go beat Michigan. You know, go beat them up one more time. I mean, not beat them up. You know what I mean. Anyway, but to close this out, we should talk about Mr. Will Sheehy. He wasn't great tonight. 5 for 14, 13 points. Played okay. I mean, he was standard. You know what I mean?
Well,
he fought
when
like
he was
does.
good, Indiana was good.
Yeah, exactly.
So.
Exactly. And, you know, gave 48-second speech, 48-second senior speech. Starts it by saying, you're right, I do hate to lose, and I hate tonight. That was his beginning, but then he closed it by saying, I have the best teammates. I'm the luckiest guy in the world because I have the best teammates in the world. I have the best coaches in the world. I have the best family in the world, and I play at the best university in the world. Dropped the mic. I think he had said maybe one sentence before that. That was the end of it. It was very, very Will. And I think the crowd did, I think, show Will the proper amount of, you know, kind of reverence for what he meant to the program. Certainly didn't have the senior season he wanted to have, and this is a sadly, unfortunately fitting end for him. But as we pointed out, in a lot of ways, you know, really helped to change the culture of Indiana and became, I always said he was, you know, if Cody Zeller was the face of the program, Jordy Hulse was the heart, Victor Oladipo was the soul, and Will Sheehy was the spine. You know, meant a lot to that team when they needed somebody like him. Didn't have as much talent as those guys, but meant a lot. He was a pain in the butt for the media for 4 years. And Will, if you ever watched this, yes, you were. You just could not stand talking to us, and it was obvious. I think everybody that covered him still, you know, had a lot of respect for the kind of player he was. Everybody that watched him, I think, certainly did as well. So that's a guy that they're going to miss in a whole heck of a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think respect is the thing. You know, whether it's between Will and the fans, between Will and the media, Will and probably even the opposition.
Yeah.
Is as much as at times you may or may
Players
not
hated him.
like him.
Yeah.
You, in the end, wind up respecting him for the way he played the game.
Yeah, the way he handled himself just in general. You had to sort of, you know, give a nod to that guy. But anyway, thanks, everybody. Maybe we'll be back here. Maybe we won't. We'll be in Ann Arbor on Saturday. Thanks.